Waiter gets fired for being too old. Then an important Japanese client arrives and only he knows. Walter Johnson Smith wiped his eyes with the back of his hand as he packed his personal belongings into a cardboard box. 45 years of work in the same place were coming to an end on an ordinary Tuesday morning, in front of all the employees who watched in awkward silence. "Mr. Walter, you need to understand that times have changed," said Brian Thompson, the 32-year-old manager who had taken over the position just 6 months earlier. "The restaurant needs to modernize. You can't keep up with the pace the place demands anymore." Walter stopped packing his things and looked at the young man who could have been his son. The Paramount restaurant was the most traditional in New York City, frequented by the city's elite for decades. He knew every table, every customer, every food preference of the regulars. "But Brian, I've never received a single complaint," Walter said, his voice trembling. "The customers like my service." "That's exactly it, Mr. Walter. You're too attached to the old customers and can't give attention to the new ones. The place needs to refresh its clientele, attract younger people. You represent the past, and we want to build the future." The other waiters lowered their heads. Tyler, 26, whom Walter had personally trained when he joined 2 years ago, couldn't meet the veteran's eyes. Ashley, the only waitress in the establishment, nervously bit her lip. Walter continued arranging his belongings in the box: a small black notebook, a golden pen he'd received as a gift from a special customer years ago, and a photo of the team taken last Christmas. His hands shook slightly as he folded the white apron he had worn every day for nearly 5 decades. "You're entitled to all severance pay, of course," Brian continued, trying to soften the blow. "And if you need a letter of recommendation—" "No need," Walter interrupted, closing the box. 45 years of work speak for themselves." He walked toward the staff exit, carrying his box. As he passed through the kitchen, Mrs. Betty, the 61-year-old head chef, grabbed his arm. "Walter, this is unfair. You're the soul of this place." "Things change, Betty. Maybe he's right. Maybe I really am too old." "Nonsense. You know every customer like their family. These kids don't even remember the names of the people they serve." Walter smiled sadly and kept walking. At the exit, he ran into Mr. George, the 70-year-old doorman who had worked there even longer than he had. "I heard everything, Walter. What a disgrace. After all you've done for this place. It's life, George. It goes on. Will you be okay?" Walter hesitated. The truth was, he didn't know. At 68, with retirement still out of reach because of years working off the books early in his career, he needed to keep working. But who would hire a waiter his age? "I'll figure it out, I always have." He walked out the staff door for the last time, carrying decades of memories and experiences that had just been deemed obsolete. 3 days later, Walter sat on the small balcony of his daughter's apartment in Queens, watching the street below without much interest. Since being let go, he hadn't been able to do much besides sit there, thinking about what had happened. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. "Dad, you need to get out a little," said Jennifer, his 42-year-old nurse daughter. "Sitting there won't solve anything. Where am I supposed to go, sweetheart? Who's going to hire me at this age? You have experience. You know everything about the business. Somewhere will value that." Walter shook his head. He knew the job market wasn't kind to people his age. The discrimination was subtle, but real. There was always an excuse: overqualified, not the right fit, the company looking for someone more dynamic. "Jennifer, I worked my whole life. I started as a kitchen helper at 15, became a waiter at 18, and was promoted to head of the dining room by 30. I trained dozens of employees, took care of that place like it was my own, and in the end it meant nothing." "Of course it meant something, Dad. You raised a daughter. You've always been an honest, respected man. That has value." Walter sighed. Jennifer was right, but the feeling of uselessness was strong. He had grown used to having a routine, to being needed, to knowing every detail of his job better than anyone. Meanwhile, at the Paramount, Brian was facing his first major crisis as manager. That morning, Kenji Suzuki, a 55-year-old Japanese businessman, had arrived for a crucial business meeting. Suzuki owned a chain of high-end restaurants and was considering an important partnership with the Paramount. Tyler was assigned to serve him, but from the very beginning, things went wrong. The Japanese businessman arrived promptly at 9 in the morning, as agreed, but he wanted to follow a specific protocol before the meeting. "I would like green tea served in the traditional ceremony," Suzuki said in Japanese since he didn't speak English fluently. Tyler looked confused. The Paramount served tea, of course, but he had no idea what a traditional tea ceremony was. He brought a regular cup with hot water and a green tea bag. Suzuki looked at what was served, and his expression visibly changed. He didn't touch the cup. "Where is Walter?" he asked, still in Japanese. "Walter?" Tyler didn't understand. "The Japanese-speaking waiter, Walter-san." Tyler was even more confused. He knew Suzuki was referring to Mr. Walter, but he had no idea the veteran waiter spoke Japanese. Brian was called in urgently. "Mr. Suzuki, is there a problem?" Brian asked, trying to stay calm. "Where is Walter? He always serves me when I come here for 20 years. "Oh, you mean Walter Johnson. He doesn't work with us anymore." "What do you mean?" "He was let go. We're modernizing the staff." Suzuki's expression grew even more serious. He stood up from the table. "Walter-san was let go?" "Yes, sir, but I assure you our new waiter is very competent. Walter-san has been my friend for 20 years. He learned Japanese to serve me better. He knows exactly how to prepare tea the way I like it." "You dismissed Walter-san?" Brian began to understand the gravity of the situation. The contract being negotiated was worth over $2 million for the restaurant. "Mr. Suzuki, I can explain." "There's nothing to explain. If Walter-san is no longer welcome here, then neither am I." Suzuki picked up his briefcase and headed for the exit. Brian ran after him. "Please, sir, we can fix this. I can call Walter back." "Walter-san should never have been dismissed. He's a man of honor. He worked here for decades. You don't respect people of value." "It was a misunderstanding." "It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was disrespect. I'm canceling our partnership, and I'll tell other businessmen how you treat loyal employees." Brian watched in despair as Suzuki walked out of the restaurant. In a matter of minutes, a deal that had taken months to build had completely fallen apart. He returned to his office and called the owner of the restaurant, Edward Williams, a 75-year-old man who lived in Miami and rarely showed up at the establishment since Brian took over as manager. "Mr. Edward, we have a serious problem," said Brian, recounting what had happened. "Suzuki left the restaurant because of Walter?" asked the owner, incredulous. "Yes, sir. Apparently they had a close relationship for 20 years. "Of course they did. Walter knows every important customer in this place personally. He has a remarkable memory for details. How could you let him go without consulting me?" "Sir, you told me to modernize the restaurant. Modernizing doesn't mean throwing away experience and relationships built over decades, Brian. Walter is this establishment's human treasure." "What do you want me to do?" "Find Walter immediately, apologize and bring him back, and pray that Suzuki is willing to talk again." Brian hung up the phone with sweaty hands. He knew he'd made a grave mistake, but hadn't imagined the consequences it would bring. That afternoon, he called the number Walter had left in the employee records. Jennifer answered. "Hello?" "Good afternoon. I'd like to speak with Walter Johnson, please." "Who's calling?" "Brian Thompson from the Paramount." Jennifer paused. She'd been there when her father came home 3 days ago, devastated and humiliated. "What do you want with my father?" "I need to talk to him. It's urgent." "Urgent? 3 days ago you said he was too old and now it's urgent. Please let me explain everything to him. It's about an important client." "My father isn't well enough to take work calls. You humiliated him in front of all the staff." "I know I made a mistake." "A mistake? You destroyed the dignity of a man who dedicated 45 years of his life to that restaurant." Jennifer hung up. Brian tried calling again, but she didn't answer. The next day, Brian decided to go to Walter's address in person. It was a modest building in Queens, very different from the upscale neighborhoods he was used to. When he rang the intercom, Jennifer answered. "What do you want here?" "I need to speak with your father. It's very important." He doesn't want to talk to you. Please, just 5 minutes. I promise I'll leave afterward. Jennifer hesitated. Her father truly wasn't well. He spent his days silent, lost in thought. Maybe hearing what this man had to say could help in some way. 5 minutes, she said, opening the door. Brian climbed the 3 flights of stairs to the apartment. When Jennifer opened the door, he saw Walter sitting on the balcony, staring at the street. "Mr. Walter?" Brian called. Walter turned his head slowly. When he saw who it was, his expression didn't change. "What do you want here, boy?" "I need to talk to you. Something very important happened." "More important than firing an employee for being old?" Brian swallowed hard. He deserved that response. "Mr. Walter, I made a terrible mistake. Suzuki came to the restaurant yesterday and asked for you. When he found out you'd been let go, he cancelled a $2 million partnership." Walter kept staring at the street, showing no surprise. "Suzuki-san has always been a man of principles." "You speak Japanese?" "I learned the basics to serve him better. He started coming to the restaurant 20 years ago. At first he struggled with English. I thought it would be kind to learn a few words in his language." "Why didn't you ever tell me that?" Walter finally looked at Brian. "You never asked. You were too busy thinking I was incompetent to care about what I could do." Brian felt even smaller. "Mr. Walter, I came here to apologize and to invite you to come back. The restaurant needs you. Now it needs me. 3 days ago, I was just a useless old man. I was wrong, completely wrong." Walter stood up and went to the kitchen to get a glass of water. Brian followed him. "Mr. Walter, what can I do to fix this mistake?" "Nothing, kid. You can't undo the humiliation you caused me in front of my colleagues. You can't give back the dignity you took from me. But I can try to make it right somehow." Walter drank the water slowly before answering. "You know what's wrong with your generation, Brian? You think everything can be fixed whenever it's convenient, that people are just pieces that can be swapped out and replaced as needed. I understand your anger." "Anger?" Walter shook his head. "It's not anger, boy. It's disappointment. I believed my work meant something, that the relationships I built over the years had value." Jennifer appeared in the kitchen. "Dad, maybe you should hear what he has to say." "There's nothing to hear, sweetheart. He already said everything 3 days ago." Brian grew desperate. "Mr. Walter, Suzuki said he'll tell other business owners how we treat loyal employees. This could ruin the restaurant. A lot of people could lose their jobs." Walter stopped drinking and looked at Brian. "And you think I care about that now? You worked there for 45 years. That place is part of your life." "It was, until you reminded me I was disposable." Brian realized the situation was more complicated than he'd thought. It wasn't just about money or jobs. It was about respect, dignity, and recognition. "What can I do for you to forgive me?" Walter stared at him for a few seconds. "Son, do you really want an answer? Or are you just trying to save your job?" The question caught Brian off guard. He thought for a moment before responding. "Both, to be honest, but mostly I want to fix the wrong I did." Walter nodded slowly. At least the kid was being honest. "If you really want to fix this, you'll have to do more than just ask me to come back. You'll have to change how you treat people." "How?" "First, you'll apologize to me publicly in front of all the staff, the same way you humiliated me." "Done." "Second, you'll guarantee that no employee will be let go because of age as long as they're doing good work." "I agree." "Third, you'll create a program to value experienced employees where they can teach the younger ones." Brian hesitated. That would mean restructuring part of the restaurant's philosophy. "And fourth," Walter continued, "you'll explain to me exactly why you thought I wasn't fit for the job anymore." That was the hardest question. Brian sat at the kitchen table. "Mr. Walter, when I took over as manager, I was under pressure from the board to cut costs and modernize service. You were the highest paid employee, and I thought your age was an obstacle to attracting younger customers. And why didn't you talk to me before making the decision?" "Because," Brian paused to think, "because I underestimated you. I thought I knew better than you what was good for the restaurant." Walter nodded again. And now you've found out I have a 20-year relationship with a client worth $2 million. What else do you think you don't know about me? Brian realized there was much more to uncover. Mr. Walter, will you come back? With all these conditions? Walter looked at his daughter, who gave a subtle nod of approval. I'll think about it. But first, you'll do something for me. What? You'll call Suzuki-san and set up a meeting. Not to talk business, but to apologize personally for what happened. Will he even see me? If you say you're with me, you'll go. Suzuki-san is a man of honor. He values people who admit their mistakes. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps those of us just starting out. Now, continuing. Brian called the hotel where Suzuki was staying in Walter's presence. The Japanese businessman agreed to meet them, but made it clear it would only be out of respect for Walter. The next day, Walter dressed in his best suit and accompanied Brian to the hotel. When they arrived at Suzuki's suite, the businessman greeted Walter warmly in Japanese. Walter-san, I'm truly sorry for what happened. You didn't deserve to be treated that way. Walter replied in basic Japanese, thanking him for his concern. Brian watched the interaction between the two, impressed. Mr. Suzuki, Brian said in English, I came here to apologize in person. I made a grave mistake dismissing Walter without fully understanding his value to the restaurant. Suzuki looked at him seriously. The problem isn't just dismissing Walter-san. The problem is the lack of respect for experienced people. In Japan, we value the wisdom that comes with age. I understand that now, and I want to correct my mistake. How? Walter stepped in, explaining the conditions he'd set for returning to work. Suzuki listened carefully. These are important changes, the businessman said. They show you're willing to learn. I am, sir. Walter taught me a valuable lesson about humility and respect. Suzuki turned to Walter and said something in Japanese. Walter smiled and replied in the same language. What did he say? Brian asked. He asked if I believe you've truly changed, Walter translated. I told him I'd give you a chance to prove it. Suzuki nodded and addressed Brian. I'll reconsider our partnership, but on one condition. Walter-san must be involved in the project. He knows the quality standards I value. I completely agree, Brian said, relieved. On the way back, Brian couldn't stop asking questions. Mr. Walter, how did you learn Japanese? Why did you never mention it? Son, there's a lot you don't know about the people who work for you. Suzuki-san wasn't my only special client. There's Dr. Anderson, who has diabetes and always needs a special menu. Mrs. Elizabeth, who lost her husband 5 years ago and comes to the restaurant every Friday because it was their date night. Mr. Richard, who's blind and needs me to describe the dishes in detail. Brian was discovering a world he'd never noticed. I know the Johnsons' wedding anniversary, the Miller's daughter's graduation date, and that Dr. Michael always asks for the salad to be dressed at the table because he has high blood pressure and needs to control his salt intake. How do you remember all that? Walter pulled a small black notebook from his pocket. I write everything down. Every preference, every important date, every detail that could make their experience more special. Brian flipped through the notebook. There were hundreds of names with detailed notes on tastes, allergies, family celebrations, and even observations about each customer's usual mood. This is incredible. It's like an encyclopedia of our customers. 3,200 customers catalogued over 45 years, Walter said proudly. Each one unique, each one special. Brian finally understood the extent of what he'd lost. Walter wasn't just an experienced waiter. He was a living library of the restaurant's history and the people who frequented it. Mr. Walter, can I ask you a personal question? Go ahead. Why did you decide to give me this chance? I didn't deserve it. Walter stopped walking and looked at the young man. Because everyone deserves a second chance to do the right thing. And because I saw in your eyes that you were sincerely sorry. And what if I hadn't come looking for you? Then you wouldn't have been worthy of a second chance. The next day, Walter returned to the Paramount. Brian had called all the staff for a meeting before the restaurant opened. Everyone, said Brian, visibly nervous. "I made a serious mistake 3 days ago. I dismissed Walter Johnson Smith for the wrong reasons and unfairly. I want to publicly apologize to him and to all of you who witnessed that scene." The staff looked surprised. Tyler and Ashley exchanged relieved glances. "Walter is an asset to this place," Brian continued. "He has knowledge and experience that are irreplaceable. I'm proud to announce that he has agreed to return, not just as a waiter, but as a special consultant for training and customer relations." There was a murmur of approval among the staff. Mrs. Betty came out of the kitchen and hugged Walter emotionally. "Additionally," Brian said, "we're implementing a program where experienced staff will mentor the newer ones. Walter will coordinate this program." Walter stepped forward. "Thank you, Brian. I accept your apology and am happy to come back. But I want to make it clear that this was only possible because he had the courage to admit his mistake and a genuine desire to change." In the following days, Walter began working side by side with the newer employees, teaching them not just service techniques, but the art of building genuine relationships with customers. "Tyler," Walter said during a training session, "when you serve a table, you're not just delivering food, you're creating an experience. Every customer has a story, a reason for being here." "How so, Mr. Walter?" "See that table over there? That's the Petersons. They met here 15 years ago. Every third Friday of the month, they come to celebrate. She always orders salmon, he always orders medium rare steak. At the end, they share a dessert and reminisce about their first date." Tyler began to understand that the job went far beyond taking orders and serving dishes. "And that lady sitting alone at table 12? Mrs. Margaret, widowed 3 years ago. She comes here because her late husband loved the shrimp risotto. She always orders the same thing and stares at the empty chair where he used to sit. I always serve her a complimentary appetizer and chat with her for a few minutes. Why? Because sometimes people need our attention more than our food." These lessons completely changed Tyler's perspective on the job. He began observing customers with new eyes, noticing details that had previously gone unnoticed. Ashley also benefited from Walter's teachings. "Ashley, have you noticed that Mr. Rogers always leaves a little food on his plate?" "Yes, I have. I thought he didn't like the food." "That's not it. He has a stomach condition that prevents him from eating large portions, but he's embarrassed to ask for a half portion. So I always discreetly ask the kitchen to serve him a little less." "How did you know that?" "Because I paid attention, and because one day he told me about the surgery he had 2 years ago. People open up when they sense you truly care." The changes in the restaurant were visible. Customers began noticing the difference in service. The staff were more attentive, more considerate, more human. Suzuki returned a week later to continue negotiations. This time, he was personally greeted by Walter, who prepared green tea following the exact ritual the businessman appreciated. "Walter-san," Suzuki said in Japanese, "are you happy to be back?" "Hi, Suzuki-san. I'm where I belong," Walter replied, also in Japanese. During lunch, Suzuki observed how Walter interacted with other customers. "Did you see when he discreetly helped an elderly customer read the menu, when he remembered a couple's wedding anniversary and arranged for a special dessert, and when he noticed a lady struggling to cut her meat and subtly offered to help?" "Brian-san," said Suzuki, "now I understand why this restaurant has such a tradition. It's not just the food, it's the care for people." "Exactly. Walter taught me that our greatest asset is relationships. In Japan, we call this omotenashi. It's the art of anticipating others' needs and caring for them from the heart. Mr. Walter-san is a master at it." The partnership was formalized that same day. Suzuki not only signed the original contract, but proposed expanding the project to include Japanese hospitality training for the entire team at the Paramount. In the following months, the restaurant underwent a complete transformation. The mentorship program created by Walter became a model for other establishments. Experienced employees from various departments began to be valued for their ability to share knowledge. Walter discovered he had a talent for teaching. He started giving talks on customer service and human relationships in the workplace. His story spread through the media, becoming an example of how the experience and wisdom of older generations are irreplaceable. "Mr. Walter," said a journalist during an interview, "what was the biggest lesson you took from this experience?" That age is not synonymous with inability. In fact, it's synonymous with accumulated wisdom. Every year of work taught me something new about people and life. And for young professionals, what advice would you give? Not to be afraid to learn from those with more experience, and to always remember that one day, they too will be the elders in the workplace. Brian, in turn, became an active advocate for valuing experienced employees. He implemented anti-age discrimination policies across all the restaurants in the chain where he worked, and often shared his experience with Walter as an example of personal and professional growth. "The biggest mistake I made," he said in his talks, "was confusing modernization with devaluing experience. Modernizing means integrating the best of the past with the possibilities of the future." 6 months after his return, Walter received an unexpected offer. Suzuki wanted to fund the opening of a small restaurant where Walter could apply all his knowledge about hospitality. "Walter-san, you have a unique talent for creating human connections through food. Would you like to have your own place?" Walter was moved by the offer but hesitated. "Suzuki-san, I'm very grateful, but the Paramount has been my home for 45 years. You don't have to leave the Paramount. It could be a side project where you train new professionals in the art of personalized service." The idea was tempting. Walter talked to Jennifer, who was thrilled. "Dad, you've always dreamed of having your own business. Now you have the opportunity and the experience to make it work." "But I'm already 68, my dear. It's not the age to start a business." "It's exactly the right age. You have all the experience in the world and still have the energy to teach others." Walter decided to accept the offer. With Suzuki's support and the Paramount's partnership, he opened a small cafe in Chinatown, specializing in fusion between American and Japanese cuisine. The establishment, named Connections Cafe, quickly became a success. Walter applied all the principles he had developed throughout his career, getting to know each customer personally, anticipating their needs, and creating an environment where people felt truly welcome. Jennifer left her nursing job to manage the cafe alongside her father. Together, they created a unique place where every customer was treated like a special friend. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like the video and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing, Connections Cafe became a gathering spot for the local community. Walter kept his tradition of noting details about each customer, creating a warm atmosphere where everyone knew one another. A year after opening, the cafe received a special visit. Brian showed up one Saturday afternoon, accompanied by his wife and young children. "Mr. Walter, I came to see your new project," said Brian, clearly impressed by the welcoming environment. "Welcome, Brian. This is my daughter Jennifer, my partner and manager. Pleasure to meet you. Your father is a very special person." "I know," Jennifer smiled. "I've always known, but not everyone had the sensitivity to see it." Brian felt a little embarrassed, but Walter stepped in. "Jennifer, Brian learned an important lesson. It made him a better person and a more humane professional." "That's true," Brian agreed. "Mr. Walter, I wanted to share that we've implemented the mentorship program across all restaurants in the chain. We've trained over 200 employees in the last few months." "That's wonderful. How's the reception been?" "Incredible. The younger employees love learning from the experienced ones, and the veterans feel valued and useful. It's been a complete cultural shift." During the conversation, Brian's children played in a special area Walter had set up in the cafe for families. The waiter noticed the youngest boy was struggling to eat on his own. "How old is he?" Walter asked. 3. He's still learning to use utensils." Walter went to the kitchen and returned with a special set of child-sized utensils and a divided plate. "To make it easier for him," he said, offering the utensils to the boy. The child was delighted and managed to eat much better. Brian's wife looked on in admiration. "How did you know exactly what he needed?" "Experience, Mom. I've served many families over the years. I've learned that small details make all the difference. At that moment, Brian once again understood the depth of the human treasure he had nearly lost. Walter wasn't just an experienced professional, he was someone who deeply understood people's needs at every stage of life. Months later, Connections Cafe welcomed another special visitor. Edward Williams, the owner of the Paramount, appeared one Monday morning. "Walter, my friend," said the 75-year-old gentleman, "I came to see your new venture." "Mr. Edward, what a joy to have you here. I heard you've created something truly special, and that Suzuki is so impressed he wants to replicate the concept in Japan." It was true. Suzuki had been so charmed by Connections Cafe that he proposed adapting the concept for Japan. "Mr. Walter-san," Suzuki had said during a recent visit, "you've created something that transcends cultures. Genuine care for people is universal." "Mr. Edward," Walter said, "I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you for all these years at the Paramount. Even though you weren't involved day to day, I always had your trust and respect. Walter, you're one of the greatest assets I've had in my entire business career. I deeply regret what happened with Brian." "It's in the past, sir. Brian is a good man who learned a valuable lesson. Today, he's one of my biggest supporters. And what are your plans for the future?" Walter looked around his cafe, seeing satisfied customers, well-trained staff, and the warm atmosphere he had created. "I want to keep doing what I've always done, caring for people through hospitality. But now I also want to teach others to do the same." "What do you mean?" "I'm developing a course on humanized hospitality. Not just service techniques, but how to create genuine connections with people." The idea had come naturally. Walter noticed that many businesses focused only on efficiency and profit, forgetting the human element that made an experience truly special. The course began to be offered at the cafe itself on Tuesday and Thursday mornings. Professionals from various fields, not just food service, came to learn from Walter about the art of caring for people. "The first lesson," Walter would tell his classes, "is understanding that every person we serve has a story, fears, joys, and unique needs. Our job is to honor that individuality." "But how do we do that in practice when we have so many customers to attend to?" a student would inevitably ask. "Start small. A genuine smile, a kind word, paying attention to a small detail. It doesn't have to be grand to be meaningful." Walter's students began applying these lessons in their own work, creating a ripple effect of kindness and care that spread throughout the city. One of his most dedicated students was Sarah, a 28-year-old nurse who worked at a public hospital. She started using Walter's teachings when caring for patients. "Mr. Walter," she shared in class, "I began observing patients more closely, just like you taught. I found out that Mr. Edward, who comes in for physical therapy, recently lost his wife and is very lonely. I started spending a few extra minutes talking with him, and it completely changed his mood during treatment." "And how do you feel doing that?" "Much better. I feel like my work has more purpose, that I'm truly helping people beyond just medical care." These stories filled Walter with pride. He was successfully multiplying the impact of his philosophy through others. 2 years after opening Connections Cafe, Walter received an unexpected invitation. The local university wanted him to give a lecture to business students about leadership and people management. "Mr. Walter," the course coordinator said, "your methods have drawn a lot of attention in academic circles. We'd love for you to share your experience with our students." Walter was nervous about the idea. He had never spoken to a university audience before. "Professor, I don't have an academic background. I only have practical experience." That's exactly what our students need to hear. They have plenty of theoretical knowledge but little experience with the value of human relationships in the workplace. The lecture was scheduled in an auditorium with 200 students. Walter prepared his presentation with Jennifer's help, focusing on the importance of valuing every person in the workplace. On the day of the lecture, Walter was visibly nervous. He had never spoken to so many people at once. But when he began telling his story, from his early days as a kitchen helper to opening his own cafe, the students were completely captivated. "You'll graduate and take on leadership roles," Walter told the audience. "When that happens, remember that every employee who works for you has a life, a family, dreams, and fears. Treat each one the way you'd want your own parents or grandparents to be treated. A student raised their hand. Mr. Walter, how do you balance this humanization with the need for results and profits? Excellent question. Humanization isn't the enemy of efficiency. In fact, employees who feel valued and respected work better, miss fewer days, and build stronger ties with the company. Plus, customers can tell when they're being served by people who are genuinely happy at work. But what about when you have to let someone go? Walter paused for a moment before answering. Sometimes layoffs are unavoidable due to economic or performance reasons, but how you handle them defines the kind of leader you are. You can let someone go while preserving their dignity, offering transition support, and honestly explaining the reasons. Or you can humiliate and discard them. The choice is yours. The lecture was a success. Many students approached afterward to ask questions and seek advice. Walter realized he had a new mission: to influence the next generation of leaders to be more humane and respectful. In the following months, Walter was invited to speak at other universities and companies. His message about valuing people in the workplace resonated with diverse audiences. During one of these lectures at a major tech company, Walter met Carol, a 55-year-old executive facing pressure to retire early. "Mr. Walter," she said during the coffee break, "I'm going through a situation similar to what you experienced. My younger colleagues think I don't understand technology and can't keep up with market changes. And you? What do you think? I know I need to stay updated, but I have 25 years of experience in this field. I know the clients, understand the market, and can navigate crises. Doesn't that have value?" Of course it does. Experience isn't learned in courses or books. It's built over years, handling real situations. How can I show that to my colleagues? Walter reflected on his own experience. Maybe the same way I did. Demonstrate the value of what you know in practice. Create opportunities to mentor younger colleagues. And most importantly, keep learning. Age should never be an excuse to stop growing. Carol followed Walter's advice. She created a mentorship program at her company where seasoned executives guided younger professionals. The program was so successful that other companies in the group began replicating it. 6 months later, Carol called Walter. "Mr. Walter, I wanted to thank you for your advice. Not only did I not retire, but I was promoted to Director of Human Development. My experience is no longer seen as a problem. It's now valued as an asset." These stories multiplied. Walter was building a network of people, applying his teachings in different contexts, spreading a culture of respect and appreciation for experience. 3 years after the incident at the Paramount, Brian approached Walter with a special proposal. "Mr. Walter, the restaurant chain wants to formalize a partnership with you. We'd like you to be our official consultant for human development." What would that mean in practice? You'd visit our restaurants, train managers, and help us maintain the culture of valuing people that we learned from you. Walter was flattered but had one condition. "I accept, but with one requirement. I want to recommend experienced employees from other places to work in your restaurants. Many people go through what I did." Perfect. In fact, that strengthens our image as a company that values age diversity. The partnership was formalized, and Walter began traveling to different cities, always accompanied by Jennifer, visiting restaurants and training teams. Everywhere he went, Walter encountered similar stories: experienced employees being underestimated, young leaders making the same mistakes Brian had made, and customers who preferred being served by more seasoned staff. "Age discrimination is a national issue," Walter remarked to Jennifer during a trip. "It's not just in our industry." "Dad, you're making a difference. Everyone who hears your talks carries that message forward." Indeed, the impact of Walter's teachings was beginning to transcend the food industry. Companies from various sectors started revisiting their human resource policies, creating specific programs to value more experienced employees. A study conducted by a university showed that companies implementing age appreciation programs had lower employee turnover, higher customer satisfaction, and better organizational morale. During an interview for a business magazine, Walter was asked about the secret to his success. "There's no secret," he replied. It's just a matter of treating people with respect and dignity, regardless of age, and understanding that experience is a valuable asset, not a liability. Do you consider yourself an activist? Walter laughed. No, I just consider myself someone who learned to value what truly matters: human relationships. At that moment, Walter received a call that would change his life once again. It was Suzuki, calling directly from Japan. Walter-san, I have a proposal for you. I'd like you to come to Japan to visit our restaurants and help implement the concept of humanized hospitality here. Walter was surprised. Suzuki-san, it would be an honor, but I don't speak Japanese fluently. You don't need to speak Japanese to teach about humanity. I'll arrange for a translator. What you have to teach transcends languages. The trip to Japan was scheduled for the following month. Walter and Jennifer would spend 2 weeks visiting restaurants, giving lectures, and experiencing Japanese hospitality culture. Dad, Jennifer said while preparing for the trip, when I was little, I never imagined you'd become an international reference in customer service. Neither did I, sweetheart. Life sometimes takes us down paths we didn't plan. Do you regret anything that happened? Walter thought for a moment. I don't even regret being let go. If it weren't for that, I never would have discovered that I could teach and influence so many people. Sometimes the worst experiences lead us to the best destinations. The trip to Japan was an absolute success. Walter was impressed by Japanese hospitality culture, but also managed to contribute his own perspective on human relationships. In the United States, Walter explained to an audience of Japanese business owners, our hospitality comes from the heart. We like to make people feel like part of the family. The Japanese were fascinated by Walter's American approach. They had strict service protocols, but sometimes lacked the spontaneity and warmth Walter demonstrated. During his stay, Walter visited a traditional restaurant in Tokyo, where he met Yamada-san, a 72-year-old waiter who had worked at the same place for 50 years. Through the translator, Walter had a long conversation with Yamada-san, exchanging experiences about the meaning of work in later years. Yamada-san says that in Japan, elders are naturally respected, the interpreter translated. He was shocked to hear that in the United States, you were let go because of your age. Tell him that's changing, Walter replied. More and more people understand the value of experience. When he returned to the United States, Walter brought back new ideas and a broader perspective on hospitality. He began incorporating elements of Japanese philosophy into his trainings, creating a unique fusion between American warmth and Japanese excellence. Connections Cafe became an international case study. Delegations from different countries came to learn about Walter's model, which combined operational efficiency with genuine human connection. An American business magazine published an article about Walter titled, "The Waiter Who Revolutionized Global Hospitality." The article highlighted how his experience with age discrimination had transformed into a mission to value people in the workplace. Walter Johnson Smith isn't just an experienced waiter, the article stated. He's an ambassador of humanity in the corporate world. The international attention led Walter to be invited to speak at conferences around the globe. Always accompanied by Jennifer, he traveled to Argentina, Chile, Canada, England, and several European countries. In each place, his message was the same: people are not disposable, experience is valuable, and true success in business comes from authentic relationships. During a talk in London, Walter was asked about the future of work in an era of artificial intelligence and automation. Machines can do many things better than humans, Walter replied, but they'll never replace empathy, the intuition to understand what a person needs, or the ability to create emotional connections. These skills grow stronger with age and experience. Back in the United States, Walter decided to write a book about his experiences. With the help of a journalist, he compiled his stories, teachings, and reflections on work, age, and human relationships. The book, titled Serving from the Heart, Lessons from a Life Dedicated to People, became a national bestseller. Walter donated all royalties to a foundation he created to combat age discrimination in the workplace. "This book isn't about me," Walter said at the launch. "It's about all the people who've been underestimated because of their age and still have so much to contribute. The Walter Johnson Foundation began offering free legal guidance to those facing age discrimination, along with job placement programs for older workers. At 70, Walter had become a national and international reference for valuing professional experience, but he never forgot his humble origins or the fundamental lesson he'd learned. A person's true worth isn't measured by age, but by the quality of their character and the depth of their experience. During an interview celebrating the 5th anniversary of Connections Cafe, Walter was asked about his future plans. "I plan to keep doing what I've always done, taking care of people. As long as I have health and energy, I'll keep teaching that age is synonymous with wisdom, not incapability." And what advice would you give to those facing age discrimination? Don't give up. Show your value through your work. And above all, never stop learning. Experience combined with up-to-date knowledge is an unbeatable force. Walter's story had become more than a personal triumph. It was a symbol of social change, showing that American society could evolve to better value age diversity in the workplace. Brian, now the regional director of the restaurant chain, often said in his talks that Walter had been his greatest teacher in leadership. "He taught me that a true leader isn't someone who commands but someone who serves, and that the experience of older employees is a treasure companies must learn to appreciate." At the Paramount, a discreet plaque near the entrance honored Walter. Dedicated to Walter Johnson Smith, who taught us that experience and dedication never go out of style. Suzuki, who had become a close family friend, visited the United States regularly. His Japanese company had implemented Walter's hospitality model in over 50 restaurants, always with excellent results. "Mr. Walter-san," he said during one visit, "you've created something that will last for generations. You've changed how people think about work and age. Mr. Suzuki-san, I just did what I thought was right. The rest was a consequence." On a Sunday morning, 5 years after his return to the Paramount, Walter was at Connections Cafe getting ready for another day of work. At 71, he remained active, but now shared more responsibilities with Jennifer and a well-trained team. As he arranged the tables, Walter reflected on the journey he had taken. From a humiliated waiter dismissed for being considered too old, he had become an inspiration to thousands of people around the world. Jennifer arrived at the cafe carrying a stack of letters. "Dad, more mail came in from people who read your book and watched your talks." Walter opened a few letters. One was from a 60-year-old executive who had landed a new job after attending one of Walter's lectures. Another came from a young manager who had completely changed how she treated older employees. "You know, honey," Walter said, "I think I've discovered the true purpose of life." "What is it?" "To use our experiences, even the painful ones, to help others, to turn our wounds into wisdom that can benefit the world." Just then, an elderly couple walked into the cafe. Walter approached to greet them. "Good morning. First time here?" "Yes," the woman replied. "We've heard wonderful things about this place." "I'll take care of you personally. You can sit at the window table. It has a lovely view." As he served the couple, Walter noticed the man had trouble holding his cup due to a tremor in his hands. Discreetly, he brought out a cup with a larger handle and a deeper saucer. "Thank you so much," the man said, visibly grateful for the attention. "Of course, if you need anything, just let me know." Later, when the couple left, they left a note on the table. "Thank you for treating us with such kindness. It's been a long time since we felt so welcome somewhere." Walter tucked the note away with hundreds of others he had received over the years. Each one represented a life touched, a person who had felt valued and respected. That evening, after the cafe closed, Walter and Jennifer sat down to discuss plans for the coming year. "Dad, the publisher wants you to write a second book." "About what?" "About aging with purpose and dignity. There seems to be a lot of demand for that topic." Walter considered the idea. He truly had much to share about finding meaning in later years, especially in the context of work. "Maybe it's a good idea. So many older people feel invisible and unnecessary." "Exactly. You can show that aging can be the start of a new, productive, and meaningful chapter." End of story. And you, What did you think of this story of resilience and dignity? Have you experienced something similar or know someone who faced workplace discrimination? Share your thoughts in the comments about how Walter turned an injustice into a life mission. Your story might inspire others. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more heartwarming stories like this one.